either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And today we are entering a genre/country of film that we've been wanting to do for a while.
Indeed.
We are doing our first South Korean film.
Yes.
And it is one that holds a special place in my heart as, one, it was the first foreign film, not non-English foreign film I remember watching.
Nice.
And also because the director's quite famous.
Yes.
Nowadays.
Yeah, nowadays, quite famous.
So, Chris, what movie are we reviewing today?
We're watching The Host.
The Host.
The 2006 The Host. Because if you type in The Host into Google, you will get a completely different movie.
Yes.
We are specifically looking at the 2006 Korean monster film.
Yes, and I am excited. I've been wanting to do this one for a while. I think it was one of the first ones I suggested we do, but we decided to hold off on it just a wee bit.
Just a wee bit, but now that we've covered a couple other monsters, and you've had time to experience the old monster flicks of yore, we have reached the perfect moment for this movie.
Yes, no, it is. I am super excited. So, before we get into it, Chris, what are we drinking today?
Well, to match our wonderful Korean movie, we have some soju, but I am a wuss, and so we're going to cut it with some orange juice.
Yes, so I am super excited.
Gonbai.
Gonbai?
Gonbai.
I butchered that.
What alcohol is not improved by orange juice?
Rum. No.
No?
I don't know. I gotta think on that one.
I will also. At this point, I'm just going to start putting orange juice in all my drinks.
Peppermint schnapps.
No, I think I could make that work.
Oh, no. So, anywho. The Host is a 2006 South Korean horror film that was written by Bong Joon-ho and Won Joon-ha, and Chul Hyun-baek. But it was directed by Bong Joon-ho. I do apologize if I butcher any names. As always, we don't speak Korean.
No.
And it stars Kang Ho-sung, who many will recognize from his role as the father in Parasite.
Oh, yeah.
Byun-hee Bong, Park Hae-il, Bae Doona, and Ko Ah-sung.
Yes.
All of whom, besides the sister Bae Doona, have starred in many of Bong Joon-ho's other films.
Yes, so if you're familiar with this director, these faces are going to look really similar. Really familiar to you.
And most people would probably be more familiar with Bae Doona's roles in another South Korean film, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance.
A good one.
As well as Cloud Atlas and Jupiter Ascending.
I think a lot of people are going to recognize her from the Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah.
That one, even my dear sweet husband has watched many a time.
It's the one of those I have not seen. Probably for good reason, too. But, so, for those who have not seen The Host, I do recommend watching it before the review.
Yes, this is a good one.
The Host is about a family's desperate attempt to rescue the child of the family after it's been abducted by a creature that came out of the Han River.
Yeah. In a way. And at the same time, though, there's like these delightful layers to this movie that make it more than that in a bunch of different directions. Exactly.
And so before I get into it, I do want to state that all my sources come from commentary from the cast and crew on the Blu-ray disc. I can speak. The Blu-ray disc that I have, as well as some little bit of Google research here and there for some odd bits and ends of history, because there is a weird amount of history in this movie, too.
There is. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't read any Korean, and Google Translate is not a super great way of reading articles yet, so a lot of the same.
Yeah. So, The Host actually originally came from an idea Bong had in high school, of what would happen if something like the Loch Ness Monster appeared in the Han River.
Yeah, and I think there was a news article mentioning that there had been this mutated fish that had been caught in the river, and that a lot of people connected that inspiration, as it has similar... I wouldn't say it looks similar, but, like, you can definitely see where, like, this monster is a very organic mutant sort of monster, as opposed to, like, a sci-fi monster. And the artists who designed the monsters did collect various samples and pictures of mutated creatures to pull inspiration. Yeah. It's a very down-to-earth looking monster. Yes. As well, Bong was influenced by a real-life event called the McFarlane Incident, as well as M. Night Shyamalan's dealing with aliens in Signs, and how it was focused on the family. Yeah. And for those unfamiliar, as I know many of us are not, the McFarlane Incident was a case back in 2000 when the civilian employee Albert McFarlane ordered 2 morgue workers to dump 192 16-ounce bottles of formaldehyde down a drain that ended up in the Han River. And to elaborate just a little bit more on that, the gentleman who instructed the dumping of the formaldehyde was linked to a U.S. Army base. So this created a lot of tension that was already there, but it built on that problem. Yeah, and there's a lot more to the case that, not for this podcast, but is interesting if you want to get into it, because there was a lot of questions on jurisdiction, since the Han River is the main source of drinking water for Seoul. Yeah, and also, like, there was a lot of tension that was there beforehand and continues on today. It's really interesting. I definitely recommend looking into it, especially after you watch this movie, because there is an underlying current that is throughout this film. Yeah. And speaking of the river, because I'll get into more stuff later on, but they actually went and scoped everything, to find locations. Most of this movie is filmed on location. Which, once we get a little farther in the movie, good on these actors for getting all wet and gross and dirty in what appears to be very cold water. Yes. And so, let's get into the host. Yes. We open with, as we mentioned, with the McFarlane Incident, an American doctor ordering other doctors to dump bottles of formaldehyde down the drain. Yes, and I like this scene because it doesn't just set up our premise for the movie. It also sets the tone for a non-Korean familiar audience on how a Korean film plays. Yes. The dialogue is similar, especially with this being a horror film, but there is a few more points that are put out to the audience a little bit more blatantly, like, are you sure this is a bad idea? Yes. Like, that is going to be a little bit more direct, so that way the audience doesn't have to spend time thinking about that. We can spend more time being connected to the characters. Yes, and it also starts to frame the Americans as the bad guys. Yes. Which, not a bad thing either, so, which I assume probably led to why it was not really... widely. We didn't get it over here? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if you do want to watch it, it's free on YouTube. It's fantastic. So good. And so, from this, we cut to a pair of fishermen who catch a weird animal in the river, as well as a catch and accidentally release, as well as a businessman committing suicide and seeing something in the water, as we get our movie's opening title. Yes. A good build up for a creature flick. Yes. Bong does mention that suicides happen almost every day on the Han River. Which is terribly unfortunate, but this film has a lot of sad bits that are tied really strongly back to everyday life. Yes, because these little bits of layering actually do tie in for a little bit later on in the movie. Yeah. Because from this, we do get this juxtaposition where we cut to a man asleep at his snack stand as children try and steal snacks before he is shooed off. Yep. Yes. These kids actually do tie in later on too. Yeah, it is a really nice working of everything, even if you don't necessarily catch it the first time you watch this movie. Yeah. I like the repeat of locations and characters. It makes it so that while we are located in a big city on a big river, we kind of have pinpoints that we know where they are, even though I've never been to this city. Exactly. And so we kind of we're getting establishments of where everything's at, and we're starting to get introduced to our characters as we're, we get the introduction to the bumbling shopkeeper and his, doting father. Yes. And I love how in this portion they establish that
he's kind of an idiot man-child.
Yeah.
And just is kind of floating through life, but his doting father is kind of just looking out for him whenever he can.
Yeah, he definitely feels like a high school kid who never grew up.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely an adult now, but, he gets the little luxuries of like, oh, he fell asleep, that's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, he's late, that's okay.
I mean, he can't stop him from eating a leg off of a customer's dried squid.
Yeah.
And so, like, just the little bits of adding to developing these characters quickly on, because we also get a quick establishment of some of the family dynamic, because when his daughter shows up, we're introduced that the father couldn't come, and so his uncle went, but the uncle smelled of alcohol.
Yeah.
And the daughter is really excited to come back and watch her aunt at a competition.
Yes.
And we also get, like, this just little bits of build up too, because when they're in the shack setting up the TV, there's a cut of news that mentions the suicide victim from the very beginning of the movie, but only half of his body was discovered.
Bum, bum, bum.
Which,
like, because this is a monster flick and you know that from the get-go, you're like, oh, it's a sign. But unfortunately, it's not. That just kind of happens.
Yeah,
maybe not like in half, but body parts when you jump off a bridge happen.
Yeah, but this one is more so like exactly like something's eating the dead bodies.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's
but does it cause worldwide panic yet?
No. No. And one thing to point out is that now that I have seen all of Bong's major works, I even watched Okja.
Look at you.
He talks about this in his commentary, and I really want to go down a lot of his other commentaries, because there's these common themes with all his characters that they're all kind of everyday losers.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe this whole family.
Yes.
But, they're losers in different ways.
Mm-hmm. As well, the very... what's the term? Not shocking. His hair. The blonde hair with the black roots.
Yeah, it's a little edgy. But not edgy by our standards.
Yeah.
But it is based off of street fashion in Asian cultures.
Well... This part specifically, and I think nowadays it has, because remember, this movie's from 2006.
Oh, so... sure. This is the hairstyle that if you're watching anime, you're like, oh, that kid bleaches his hair, he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
He's that kid who's gonna go pick a fight.
This was supposed to be his representation of laziness and lack of self-care.
Yeah, it's very burnt, like, it's not a good dye job.
Yeah, he hasn't gone back to re-dye it. Yeah, it was just kind of like an impulse, and kind of reminds me of a little bit when Sugi dyed his hair blonde. And so, from this establishment portion, our protagonist is sent to, and there's a lot that all that I just talked about happens in like a 5-minute time period.
Yeah, this movie throws details in really nice and thickly.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure I missed a lot of other little things too, because there's
a lot going on.
Exactly. And so, our protagonist is sent to fix the order that he screwed up to the customers. But as he shows up, everyone is looking at something on the bridge.
Yes.
Oh, a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
So the creature does drop in the water and swims by them. Who the fuck feeds strange creatures in the river just a bunch of random junking, like, full cans of beer?
Midwesterners.
For those of us not from the Midwest, elaborate. Is this from experience, or?
I don't even think this is a Midwest thing. I think this is just like a human response. Okay, imagine that you live on a river, you had a big old catfish, and the catfish one time ate an entire can of beer, and now your family feeds it cans of beer. Like, this isn't too far out of stretch for me.
Okay.
Like, if there was a wild animal, like, okay, a better example, since we don't have a ton of, like, giant river monsters around here.
Okay.
The number of people I know who actively feed the raccoon that lives in their backyard is too many.
Okay, yeah, I've seen those, unfortunately TikTok is starting to...
creep into your life?
Instagram. It's on Instagram on everything now.
It really is, yeah. People like to feed wildlife. That's why we have problems with people feeding bears and elk and mooses. Like, If people look at a giant grizzly bear and they're like, I'm going to feed it marshmallows, of course they're going to feed the new creature in the river beer.
Okay, I understand where my disconnect is coming from, because in Alaska, you don't do that.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're not right. I'm just saying that given the chance to feed wildlife beer, people gonna feed the wildlife beer.
Oh yeah, like in World War II when Russia had their army bear, and it was just an alcoholic bear that they just kept around.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. That makes a little bit more sense now. But one thing I do want to point out, that actually all like the splashes in the cars getting crushed in this movie are practical effects with CGI layered on top of them.
They look really good. There are a few parts. This movie was done on a budget, and there's parts that kind of start to sneak that in. It's also 2006, which, it ages a little bit.
Yeah.
But honestly, most of this looks pretty good, especially for how much CGI is in here.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so, and I'll get into that in just a wee bit, because as the creature seems to vanish from everyone's viewpoint, it suddenly appears running back down the walkway and begins a rampage that is causing absolute carnage. Absolute carnage.
And this is something that I think sets this movie apart from other monster flicks. Because we got our little, it dropped into the water. What was that? It was the distance. This is a little dark, hard to see, but kind of get the idea.
Yeah.
We now just get to watch the full monster rampage around town.
It's got a tentacle-y thing that grabbed the cans.
Yeah, it's got a mustache that is gross.
Yeah.
And it's got weird mouth, but normally with a monster flick, especially around this time in our film monster world, it was really popular to give the hint of the monster, and you'd spend the whole movie with just was that in the background? What was that? This movie doesn't even mess around. It's look at the monster, look at it.
Yeah, I think classic Godzilla, which we did as our second episode, which
this
we should have done a lot more research for that one. But yeah, I think classic Godzilla, where you see footprints and you see portions of him before fully seeing him.
Exactly.
And Bong actually mentioned that he wanted to break tradition and show the creature early on, but he also mentioned that he wanted the center of the creature to be around everyday life. So instead of focusing around, it's kind of coming in here, it's kind of coming in there, or it's from a remote location, it immediately screws everything up.
Yeah.
And just by having it appear and fuck up just a day on the river for most people, and a normal workday for our protagonist is a great way to do so.
And I think a lot of films have always danced around showing the whole monster early on because they're afraid that that's going to be their trump card. It's not going to be scary anymore. I think this movie proves that that's not the case at all. This monster, if anything, is more scary because I know exactly what it looks like, and I don't want its weird fish arm to touch me.
Yeah. As well, for me, we already see it, so once this little bit of chaos is over, and it allows us to focus on the family in conflict rather than the mystery of the creature.
Yes.
Because we've already been able to tie the formaldehyde to this thing mutating and changing. I do have a couple questions about the scene. Why is the dog attacking the man? There's just a random cut of a dog attacking a man.
I'm so glad you saw that too. I only have theories. I have no good reason. I hope that this dog is attempting to get its master's lazy butt up so that they can run away together. But it does kind of look like this dog only knew one trick, and that was attack.
Now that I think about it, because there's these little references that I think Bong puts in through his movies. Again, I'm only super familiar with Parasite and The Host and The Snowpiercer.
Yes.
But I've seen all of his other works, but only one time, maybe a second viewing.
Sure.
And all his major ones. I haven't seen the shorts and stuff he's done. But I wonder if it's kind of a little nod to his first debut film, Barking Dogs Never Bite.
Yeah, maybe. Because, it's not front and center, but it's also not hidden in the background anywhere.
Yeah, just a quick cut. And then also, I love the part where the girl's just listening to headphones unaware and just takes her away.
Yeah, she just gets got. Yes.
And I also wonder if it's a little jab at this, too, because he mentions that the bad dye job is so that the protagonist is supposed to be lazy. The blonde-tipped American, I wonder if it's a jab that our protagonist is supposed to be dumb, but also, American-dom, like, or if they're kindred souls, because they both take action in the same manner.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I have a hard time disconnecting his hair choice from all of the slice of lives that I've watched.
Oh yeah, and you're very much into street fashion and whatnot.
Yeah,
so.
And like, granted, street fashion comes out of a lot of this sort of stuff where like you take a problem in your life and you turn it into a fashion. We've seen that a lot with like the fashion choices where it's gothic but it's pastel but it's also showing the pain and hurt. Like, that sort of thing always does branch off. And so a lot of the K-dramas that I've liked watching in the past, J-dramas, and just animes in general, there is like this underlying stereotype of like, oh, that's the kid whose hair is not just messed up, but like matted. Like, he has not brushed that hair this whole year. It is way too long. He hasn't combed it, brushed it. But at one point he dyed it because being blonde was cool and like he wanted to look tough.
Okay.
And now it's faded out and it's gotten this weird orange yellow color. So like that's kind of how I saw it. But like I'm not as familiar with like the Korean side of stuff. And also like this is an ever-changing, like, scene and topic, like, why anyone dyes their hair.
Yeah.
It's also 2006, so, like,
yeah, I have no sense about what was going on fashion-wise or anything at all at the time.
I will say, I do like that he has this hair, because I can tell who he is in the crowd.
And I think that's kind of the point, too, is to make him stand out, but
not so much, like, he's not, like, the main character in the anime stand out. Like,
yeah.
Like, yeah, he's different, but he's not that different. Like, there's other blonde people running around.
Okay.
Like, there was a couple foreign people in the background here and there. There's, like, a tourist at some point. There's another person who's got their hair dyed blonde, but you can always find him. Okay.
Yeah. I personally think it is a little bit of a jab.
Oh, yeah, it totally could be.
Yeah.
And, like, the other thing that kind of works, whether or not it's intentional, is out of the whole family, he's the only one who's done anything to, like, drastically change their appearance. He's the only one who at any point seems to have dyed their hair. Yeah. So the other two and the grandpa and even the little girl, they do kind of blend into the crowd a little easier. Like, when later on, when we are in a crowd, we're trying to, like, get out and get doing stuff and, like, blend in. He doesn't. Yeah. And it kind of works for his character, too. Because, like, he's supposed to be the odd man out.
Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, too, is he and the American are the only ones, like, actively fighting the creature, whereas, like, everyone's trying to flee and die, which I love the level of gore and violence this movie has.
I do, too. I think it's a really perfect level.
Because it's not over the top, like,
you don't
Texas
have to
Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah.
You say it's a horror film, and just about everyone's got their bases covered.
Yeah. There's a little bit of guts here and there, and some monster blood, but
overall, it's a fairly, like, gore-free film. But at the same time, it does have a level of uneasiness throughout the whole thing, which I like a lot.
Yeah, and on top of that, a lot of this also has a mixture of practical and CGI, because when the creature is, like, swallowing people or spitting them out,
it looks really good.
Because it's a combination. Yeah. The people are real, and they're being slid through, like, this tube onto some mats.
Yeah.
While the CG's put over on top of that.
Yeah, it works really well, especially since we do spend more time physically interacting with this monster than most monster flicks.
Oh, yeah.
This monster picks up and throws not just a couple people. It, like, carries people away.
In the very beginning, it flings a dude into the river.
It just, like, eats the man into the river, yeah. I love it. And, like, there's only a handful of times where you even question if the monster's actually grabbing someone. And even then, you're like, oh, well, that guy's dead, doesn't matter.
Yep, exactly. And so, in the midst of this chaos, we get a little bit of a cut to the grandfather and granddaughter watching their aunt, who, at this point, we learn she isn't as prestigious as we were first led on. She was supposed to be, like, the golden child, and she kind of buckles under pressure.
She does buckle under pressure. We find out she's an archer, and she's competing in what I think is supposed to be, like, the nationals?
I don't know, some competition.
It's broadcasted over TV, so it must be pretty big.
Yeah.
And the announcer mentions that part of the reason she didn't do better is because she waited too long. She held out too long to try and get the perfect shot. Yeah. Which, I mean, a little heavy-handed on the metaphor, but I like it.
Yeah, no. And there was one thing I forgot to mention, because it does tie in later, is when they go in to have a drink, or like he sits her down, I think he opens a beer for her.
Yeah.
To have a drink with his like middle school daughter.
Yeah, she is like solidly in like maybe 6th or 7th grade.
Maybe about to enter high school. I don't know. They never say, I don't think they say specifically, or we just miss it or we don't.
Yeah, she feels like she's in that like 13, 14-year-old range, but it's a little hard to say.
Yeah,
but I don't know, this whole family, it kind of feels that way. Like, she's clearly babied quite a lot too. She is clearly the favorite and only child in this family, so she is doted on by everyone that they can, but in their own ways.
Yeah.
And I do like that, like, from an audience setup, we're like, oh, they're a great archer, like, family member isn't as good as we thought, but up until she only gets bronze, the whole family is like, oh my god, she's a goddess.
Yeah.
And like, I mean,
she's the best of the group.
She is doing the best out of them all, so good for her.
Yep. And so after we learn that she's not the golden child, the daughter leaves. None of them know the chaos is going on.
No, I appreciate the soundproofing in this shack.
Oh yeah.
This is some solid foam somewhere.
And as our main protagonist runs to grab her, they fall down and he accidentally grabs the wrong girl, and she gets grabbed by the creature who now flees to the other side of the river.
The filming from the scene is so good because, granted, like, I wouldn't say at this point the film has reached any level of like true panic for the audience member. Like, yeah, it's terrible, but you're not feeling the panic yet.
No.
You're just along for the eating ride. And the way this is shot, you know that he's grabbed the wrong person immediately, but it's not so blatantly given to you that you like are like, wow, this kid's dumb.
Well, and that's
you're like, oh shit, he messed up.
Yeah, and it's not even like he did it on purpose.
It was just chaos.
Yeah, he grabbed the wrong hand.
Yeah, and like, I mean.
But I also like how it's shot too, because it's like the initial, okay, he's getting away or something like horrible's about to happen, and then it just pans over,
and it's like,
it's like, oh, that's not your daughter.
Yeah, like, and it's not even like he runs with her for a while. Like, immediately another, like, this kid's dad comes and grabs her and is like, thanks for grabbing her, bye.
Yeah. Or no, not even like thanks, it's just like, what the hell are you doing, man?
Like, yeah, and like, you also you have the same amount of time as the character to process what just happened.
Yeah. Which
works really well because a lot of the times with these scenes, the audience is given a lot more time to realize what the scenario is and like how you've messed up. And so you become a little bitter to that character.
Yeah. Whereas
since this scene happens so fluidly and so fast, you as the audience are in the same boat of him as, what? Oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I know the exact moment because there's been times when to screw with my dad is he'll reach his hand to like grab my mom's and I'll slide my hand in.
Yes.
Because I've got dainty hands like my mom. So like it takes him a second to realize that, oh, this isn't my wife's hand. Yeah. But one thing I actually also quite like about what Bong has done at this point is how he addresses the creature. And he gives it some semblance of intelligence that we don't really see a lot because, I mean, if you look at King Kong and Godzilla, the creatures are relatively simple, one-minded.
And it's not until like halfway through those films that anyone even remotely is like, oh no, this is the great protector.
Yeah.
But at that point, they turn less from like a intelligent creature and more of like a benevolent god.
Yeah.
Sort of way. Whereas this one, he talks to it like it's a dumb parrot who just took something from him.
Yeah. And even then, like, King Kong, the more intelligent of the two, is very much still just a giant monkey.
Yeah, no one spends a lot of time trying to communicate.
Sorry, giant ape.
Yes.
Yes.
There is no tail.
Yeah. But one thing that Bong also mentioned is that he wanted to create a creature that conveys the feeling of something missing. And we'll see how well that works out, because I have some thoughts.
Okay.
But I do like, back to the creature's intelligence for a quick second, I like how he realized that the one that he's carrying with his tail is alive, and then the other one in his gullet's dead, and so he flip-flops them.
Yes.
Because he knows that the other one's gonna drown.
Yes.
This creature has like that, just little bit of intelligence. It's like watching Hobbs try and sneak onto the cat tree to eat Charlie's food.
Honestly, for me, it makes this creature feel more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, this level of intelligence isn't something that's like, oh my god, world-bending, astounding, but it's a level of dignity and intelligence that most monster films don't bother to give their creatures.
Yeah.
Like, it's an animal. It has the ability to tell if something's dead.
Yeah. They're not stupid.
No, they're not that stupid.
Yeah. And at this time, I do want to take a moment before moving on to talk about the creature, because
we've had a lot of time to look at this thing.
yeah, a lot's dropped in the first shot, and like we've seen the full creature and what it can do in the first 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and it's not even like Alien where we see the creature and we get kind of a snippet, and then later on we find out it can do other things.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen the entirety of this creature.
Yeah. And so Bong originally wanted to create a believable creature that was the size that could hide behind a truck. Something that is out of place, but would kind of give you like a second idea to look at. And I love that you brought up Alien, because the idea stemmed from Alien.
Yeah.
That it was at a more personal size and over like an unfathomable creature of old.
Yeah, and also, again, this makes this creature more realistic because, yeah, it's huge, it's terrifying, but also it's not so big that it couldn't hide.
Exactly, because it's been hiding for it's
huge.
It's a fairly sized creature.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes me think of, there was one time we were in Alaska, one of our trips back to renew our residency, and it was in the middle of winter, and we were driving home from a Benihana's, and I looked out my window, and then like we stopped at a red light, and then it took me from the red light to the green light, which was like maybe a minute, to realize there was a moose outside.
Yes.
Like, it was just one of those things that, like, if it's still enough, you won't register it.
Much like Drax. If it stands still long enough, it is invisible.
Kind of forgot about that for a moment. As well, he wanted to create a land creature that was mutated from a fish of some sort that was forced onto land, so like it suffers from merely existing.
Yes.
And that's
that's
why it's lashing out. It's not
angry. Supposed to be here.
Yes. He also needed the creature to work with the lead actor, Song Goon-ho, and not because he's not a big action lead, I think he referenced Tom Cruise.
Okay, I can see what he means, but also, like, I think this guy did fantastic.
Oh, no, exactly. No, that was his point, was to have them like the everyday creature matches the everyday guy, instead of, like, Tom Cruise fighting Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, no, I totally see what you mean, because if it had been more of a Tom Cruise / most American action horrors, I mean, I would love to say I can do a double flip over a monster and stab it in the eye, but let's be real. I can barely jump an inch off the ground.
Oh, I can't either. Yeah. And so, what they ended up with was something that was also heavily amphibian, with fish elements, and what he described as a bat-like face and mouth.
I see parts of it.
Yes, you've seen the logo I did for this episode,
yes.
And I could not help but think of it because it is very, I don't know, the opposite of phallic.
Yeah.
And the reason I kept thinking about it the whole movie is partly because in the commentary, Bong's English is really great.
Yes.
The one word he says, the way he says design, sounds more like vagina.
Yeah.
So, like, it took me a couple listens. It reminded me, like, not to make fun of his speaking, because
English is freaking hard.
Better than I could do of Korean, obviously. But it reminds me of, I had this acoustics professor in college, and the way he said, the vibrations of the womb.
Yes. It all ties back together.
Yes, it does. And so, like, it was just one of those things where it was like, it was the one part of the commentary that just stuck out to me the whole time.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. And in some defense, like, it does have the weird extra skin mouth thing that opens in the way it shouldn't. It's
very, female anatomy-esque.
Yeah. It reminds me of one of those dumb statues that they put up in, like, a city park, and then someone's like, that's a vagina.
Zaha Hadid soccer stadium.
Yeah, it's that all over again.
But they were very self-aware of how they were designing it in this movie.
And honestly, like, this creature does look like something that you would pull out of a dirty, mucky river.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it has the sliminess, the squishiness, but also, like, a necessary amount of teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks believable.
Yes. And I bring up the language just a little bit because, for one, I was expecting to have to pause every few minutes to write subtitle or to read and write notes from the subtitles.
Yeah.
Part of the reason his English was good, if I remember right, he did study in America for a bit, but it was important that he could convey what he wanted because the animated creature was made by the now defunct U.S. animation studio, The Orphanage.
Yes.
And many may be familiar with their work from Iron Man and Iron Man 2, as well as Sin City, Jeepers Creepers, Hellboy, and a wide range of other features from 2001 to 2009.
And honestly, once you know that, you can see their work in it.
Yeah, and there were like 5 companies that actually went into making all of this.
Oh yeah.
So, so that was the one who did all the animation, and they go into a lot of depth on like how they put muscle under the skin, and it's impressive.
No, it still holds up, even though it has aged a little.
Yeah.
It's, like, the monster itself still looks good.
Yeah. And I think that was also part of it because Bong was in constant communications with them and getting the animation just right to, like, convey the movement instead of having it be rigid and
yeah, it's not clunky. It interacts with everything like it should. It moves like it should. When I say it didn't, like, there's parts that didn't age, it's mostly like, oh, I can see where the background and the creature are mismatched just a little bit.
Yeah. And so, as well, John Cox's Creature Workshop worked on the animatronics and head sculpture, which is used later on. Listeners may have been familiar with this studio's name, as they also did the Bioraptors from Pitch Black, which we reviewed earlier this year.
I love that movie.
Yes. As well, the well-renowned Weta Workshop created the marquette that was used to scan and bring it into the computer.
Nice.
And if I remember right, I did some reading on... They only did, like, the model for the marquette, and just... They didn't have the scheduling to actually, like... Or it was too high of a budget to get them to do the CGI.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Something like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's an impressive amount of work that went into this creature. And that's the other thing, too, is that we're not only seeing just parts of the creature, we're seeing the creature in full. We're seeing it in full broad daylight.
Yes, it's not even remotely hidden.
Yeah.
And honestly, it kind of works better because now when we see it later on, when it is dark or underwater, you know what part of the creature you're looking at, which makes it arguably better because now you know which direction it's facing.
Yep.
Because it does have a little bit of butt face.
Oh. Close to the butt face.
Yes.
Yes. And so, from this moment, our protagonist and the grandfather are evacuated to a shelter where there is a mass funeral taking place. And
this does feel a little deceptive.
Well...
And here's why. Here's why I feel like this, hey, everyone, we should go over here, it feels deceptive, is because, like, we now get to spend a good long time mourning the people who have, like, died or been taken. So, here's my thing to it. This is a side note that I had that is a cultural thing that we don't have that connection to, that apparently in South Korea, mouse funerals following a great disaster are common. Oh, no, definitely. Yeah. I think the reason why I say that, like, it feels deceptive is because even though we don't have quite the same cultural equivalent here, we do have a similar thought process of, like, okay, this thing happened, everybody's photos go up, everyone come. We might not have the same level of, like, open grieving. Yeah. But, like, the reason why I say it feels weird is because they haven't even been dead 30 seconds. Okay, yeah, I can see how that's because it's a quick transition from the daughter being captured to them being transported out and then right into the funeral. Yeah, I think the movie is doing that intentionally. I don't think it's like, oh, no, the audience just isn't getting to sit and, like, be part of the grieving that then we go. I think this is, like, this is an accurate representation of the timeline.
Yeah.
Because if I was a military that now had a weird monster on my hands, ain't nobody going home to be sad.
Yeah, and I also think it's a pacing thing just to keep the movie going instead of slowing it down, because there's a little bit of slowdown here, because...
Oh yeah, this is the slowdown.
Yeah, because the aunt enters with only a bronze, and the uncle enters drunk in a drunken stupor.
Yeah.
And the family begins to do a very public freak out. That makes me think, the acting wise, I don't have anything to relate to it, but
Sure.
It makes me kind of think of the shit you see on the Maury show, or like Jerry Springer a little bit.
I can see that. I think this is part of the like cultural difference that maybe like I think most audiences will not question, but might not directly relate. Because I definitely have friends who are from a different culture than I am, and like they have described to me like that their church service is a lot more. There's a lot more weeping. There's a lot more aisle rolling and crying than mine, which is always very stiff, upright. You're lucky if anybody sheds a tear because we're all
Catholic,
stiff upper lipped.
Yeah,
and so like I think this, while like, and this is a fairly long scene of grieving. Like, it's not extended by any means. You don't feel like it's gone on too long, but it's not the quick little sniffle that most American films give to, like, a mass problem.
Yeah.
This is a healthy amount of, like, sadness.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's also a moment to further establish the siblings in the movie.
Definitely.
Because the sister comes in with only a bronze, but they're happy that, hey, look, she brought you a bronze. And I apologize for not using their names like I normally try. This is another one where, like, I would butcher them horribly every single time.
The other thing is, like, they, with the exception of the little girl, they don't yell each other's name a whole lot, so you don't really have a whole lot of opportunity to learn people's names.
Yeah.
Not upset. It's a horror movie thing. That's kind of how they all go.
Yeah. You
only really yell the name of the monster or the person immediately getting killed.
And I also like this part because it shows that the uncle has probably not stopped drinking since he left.
Nope.
The bring your father to work day.
Yeah, definitely hasn't.
Yeah. Also, side note, the actress Bae was apparently she trained well enough to be able to enter amateur competitions if she had wanted to.
That's really impressive.
Yeah. But I also like in this scene how, while the family's freaking out, the news media is following them, but the moment anyone else of importance comes in, they immediately switch their attention, and this is like the little moments of comedy and satire that I like in Bong's work.
Yes, there's a healthy level of humor.
Yeah, is that it's a little jab that the media is just following along whatever gets their attention. They're like a kid with ADHD that you're like, or ADD that you're throwing pebbles to distract them or something. I don't know. I don't know how to just... I obviously have not been around children that much.
That's okay. No, they are... I think this is definitely an over-exaggeration of a media, and it's definitely meant to be humorous, because the rapidity with which that they invade the family space to take pictures, and like even other people in the audience, like you can hear them being like, leave them alone, what the hell are y'all doing? Get out of their business. But, like, the quick succession that they go from, like, oh, well, we can put them now at under the cover fold. Yeah. They can fill in this spot. Oh, the government's here. Time to get their photos. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, like, I think every place has journalism like this. And it's definitely meant to be a stab at, like, wow, look at the scummy people.
Yeah, I also think it's a way to, like, even though their world's kind of come to a standstill.
Yeah.
The world is just moving around them.
Oh, yeah. Like, there's just people who aren't even in the city being like, what? What happened?
Yeah.
I want to know more.
Yeah. And one last little thing I wonder about this scene. I wonder if the uncle's drop kick, which is great, from, like, just a sitting drop kick.
Yes.
I wonder if that was also kind of a little nod to Memories of Murder, because one of the cops likes to do a drop kick, like, every chance he can get.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And so, after the little bit of chaos we have, everything's settled down, and we learn more about the family. The daughter's mother has popped the girl out and left the picture, to put it bluntly.
Yes.
And that her dad just kind of even falls asleep regardless of what's going on.
Yeah, he's not really an active participant in his own life, let alone hers.
I will argue against that. He is an active participant in everything out, or he's only an active participant in her life. Because remember, like, how giddy he is that she's showing up. He doesn't give a shit about his job. And he's so happy because he's been skimming change from the,
Yes.
That, by the way, that's another element that's important. Yes. He's been skimming change to buy her a cell phone because she's complaining about, like, how bad herself, and that's another element. There, like we said, there are so many, like, little bits that he's worked into this movie that actually tie in, and, like...
He reminds me of the dad from Soul Eater, where he is a garbage person to himself and to other adults around him, but to his daughter, he would bend over backwards.
Yes.
And she, as she gets older... We'll have questions.
Yeah, and we do start getting that because he's the only parent in her life, and so he has to fulfill kind of two roles.
Yeah, and he definitely, like, clearly, like, she is his world, but, like, that isn't enough to even get him out of his own funk.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and so, in this little bit of building, we have a government official walk in a hazmat suit, and takes everyone away who has come in contact with the creature. Well, just takes everyone away.
Yeah, he's like, if you've come in contact, and by that I mean all y'all.
Yeah, and I love this character just a little bit.
I do too.
Because...
He's such a dick.
And he's lazy too.
He's so lazy.
Instead of trying to explain what's happening, he says, here, I'll turn on the news. The news will tell you what's happening.
Yeah, and he doesn't even try to, like, paraphrase. He doesn't try to comfort anyone. No, it's like... Hey, make lines. No, just everybody get in the truck. Yeah, and I also like in this moment that our protagonist is just trying to be a good and honest guy. But at the same time, like, we are watching this knowing it's a monster horror flick. And so when he's like, has anyone had contact with it? And our main protagonist is like, yeah, it spit blood on me. Everyone in the room, including the audience, is like, oh, goddamn it. Well, no, it's not even that, because there's other people doing it too. It's his brother who's doing it, which is a great way to build up the brother too, because... This starts kind of establishing the brother's distrust of government officials, which leads into more stuff, which is, I love. I'm sorry, I am biased against this movie because I love it. And so from this, we get a little montage scene where we're informed that there is a potential virus from the creature as we were presented with a montage of cleanup and news that the American soldier who from earlier, the one with the blonde hair who came in contact with it, has contracted some rare virus that they can't figure out who it is. Bum bum bum. It's another thing I'll get into a little later because there's some little stuff. Because okay, so first off, Bong doesn't remember why the virus was actually added. But he liked it because it created this twofold enemy for the family in the form of the monster and later the government. Yes. He also mentions that this was the start of his little satirical jab at the Iraqi war in the virus itself, where the virus for him was terrorism, basically. Sure. And honestly, like, it feels a little out of left field. But it works much better than the government being like, the monster is the problem. Yeah. Because if all of the monster films were the monster's the problem, and the government spends all of its time trying to catch this random wahoo, you spend all your time being like, who are these dummies? It's diverting and distracting. Instead of focusing on the monster, it's focusing everyone else on another issue. Exactly. So it feels like a more valid reason to mobilize an entire military unit to capture one family. Yeah, which now being 14 years through the war, holds a completely different feeling than 2006 when patriotism was still strong and going for us being in the Middle East. Yeah. So there's little things that work really well. Definitely. And even especially with what's going on today, which we'll get into a little bit more later, but it fits differently than the first time I saw it. Yes. As well, some of the shots are actually from the SARS outbreak. Okie dokie. Yeah, yeah. And so now we cut to the family in the hospital, just kind of waiting around trying to figure out what to do. You know, like you are. But I also like this scene because it's immediately that something's amiss. Because if there was a virus that was so deadly,
why is our protagonist just chilling in general population?
Yeah, like there's
still in his body bag kind of thing as his dad's like giving him squid or some shit.
Yeah, he's not even zipped up anymore.
Yeah,
He's just got
exactly.
it like around him.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the severity that this scene and the scene before it switch from, because before it feels very like, oh, maybe the virus is a huge problem. Like, sure, it's a mutant monster. I don't know. It did lick him. That's gross.
Yeah. Well, he also got blood on him.
Exactly. So, like, you know, that's a problem. And
Yeah.
we don't know what this thing's been touching. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And then the, like, quick 180 of, like, oh, no, this is bullshit. This is a lie. I don't know who lied. I don't know what this is about. But, like, the number one patient can't be just sitting in here in the lobby eating squid.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I also like it because, like, they tell him, oh, yeah, you're going to have a bunch of procedures tomorrow. Don't eat.
Yeah, and, like, it's not even like, oh, here's, like, your normal doctor visit when you get told, like, you're having procedure, don't eat. They give you, like, this is what time you must stop.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot even have water. Like, it is described to you, and you hope with more compassion. This person just walks up to him, and they're like, oh, you're the guy in the body bag. You must be him. They don't even, like, confirm.
Yep. Yeah, and I actually learned recently why you don't eat before, because anesthesia can cause people to vomit.
Yes.
And that complicates shit.
It can. And you can inhale it and die on your own vomit.
Yes.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
That sounds bad. Sounds terrible.
Yeah. And so, that night, our protagonist is sneaking some canned squid.
Because he wants to vomit and die.
He's
but
just an idiot.
We also know, though, that this is just more proof that he has, like, no ability to control himself.
Yeah, yeah. And, during this time frame, he gets a call from his daughter. A very
She's
weak
not
call.
Dead.
Yeah.
Not da-da.
Cell phone from earlier.
Yes.
Side note, that canned squid looked delicious, and I would definitely give it a go.
I like squid, and I thought the canned squid looked disgusting, and I would not eat it.
I like stuff in brine, though.
I feel that.
Yeah.
I think if it was presented to me differently.
Instead of, like, just a dude, like, nibbling away like your peas.
Like, granted, I am a raccoon human, and, like, that is how I would eat things. But, like, drain it first, then eat it out of the can.
I forget that they make canned peas.
Yes, they do. And I eat those regularly.
Jeez. And so, from this, we cut to a disinfection crew getting got by the creature. And
bummer.
we get the creature's lair.
We do.
I like this because it does also show that it still keeps that the creature's still out there doing stuff. It's not just them trying to hunt it down. The creature is actively eating.
Yes. I also like that we get a early head start on, like, the lair. Because now the monster is not just mysteriously vanishing into the void. It's actually like, oh, it's hiding down there. Okay,
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's also a nice transition to show where the daughter's at.
Yes.
Side note, this is actually the only, as far as I'm aware, the only set that was built for this movie.
Yeah. I don't know how you do that. Where would you even find this sewer dungeon lair?
I'm sure there's something.
I'm sure somewhere it is, but, like, I'm not going to put a child down there.
Yeah.
You get a set. You get to be covered in normal mud.
Yeah, I think that's probably why, because they were working with a child actor, so they couldn't actually go into the sewers like they did with everyone else.
Yeah, because everyone else had to get, like, a bunch of shots.
A fuck ton of shots, yeah. No one got sick, which was a great thing, too.
Which is very good, because if they had, it would have been hilarious, but sad.
Yeah, yeah. So, back at the hospital, the family is trying to report the call that, hey, there's someone out there, the creature has someone.
Yeah, they just didn't eat them.
But no one's listening to them. They're like, oh, he was up late. It's his own fault. It's maybe just a dream. He's going through trauma.
This is what you eat for eating canned squid.
Yeah. They probably don't know about the canned
I don't
squid.
think they know about the squid.
No. And now is time for the chaotic escape.
Oh my goodness, this escape barely works, and I love it.
First off, I love three things about this scene. First, I love the kind of Tokyo Godfather-esque music to the background, and also the small army of hospital staff trying to wrangle them.
I love this too, because we now live in a time where, honestly, if the news came out that, like, a handful of people escaped the hospital and, like, only one staff member was willing to try and stop them, I wouldn't be surprised or upset. This hospital staff is bursting to the brim. They got people laying on the ground and stuff, eating squid out of a can, and, like, all of them stopped and were like, no, we must keep you here.
Yeah.
Good on these people. Good try, hospital staff.
Oh, yeah. And, like, I also love the part, too, where they forget the sister.
Yeah, they just completely up and forget that she's there.
That is a sibling thing of, like...
Whoops.
They have not changed as adults.
No, they are still the children they always were.
Yeah, the two bully the idiot brother, and they forget the sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's a great little comedic moment that's a nice break from, honestly, kind of the serious moments we've had up until then.
Yeah, to be honest with you, the humor parts in this movie are really well timed. They don't turn this from a horror to a horror comedy. It's still a horror movie all throughout, but you do get a nice little, like, breath in between each of the, like, intense scenes.
And the comedy is not, like, over the top like Shaun of the Dead. It's more so, like, it's integrated into the story.
Yeah, you get one man who gets punted into the river.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, little moments. Dog biting its owner and stuff like that.
Just cause.
Yeah. And so, now the Park family is being extorted and are on the run.
Yes.
Which is also a great moment where the, parts of this too, because one, the grandfather, like, pulls out his credit card.
Yeah.
Because, they won't take watches.
No, they don't. They take all his money.
And his credit card.
Which,
you know, they're being overcharged for what it is, because...
Yeah. It does make me laugh, because they don't ever say it, but you do kind of wonder if, like, that credit card's already maxed out.
Yeah.
And, like, being the nice grandpa he was trying to genuinely give them, like, the only thing of value he has.
Well, and it also shows that it starts building that the father, or our protagonist and the grandfather, are in kind of the same. They're very naive about many things and kind of dumb in their own ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Where the grandfather is kind of very trusting of the world and thinking that there's good in people, and everyone's kind of taking advantage of him.
Yeah, they're definitely walking all over him.
Yeah. But I also like this part too, because as they're trying to sneak through stuff, there's a great moment where a corrupt dickhead is like, well, you know, I know you guys aren't who you say you are, but I can let you through for a little wiggle fingers.
Little cash money.
Yeah. But I also like this because this also has a little bit of comedy in it too, because he's expecting to get a big payoff, but it's just the change.
Yeah, and it's not even like, wow, money. It's like a bucket of coins.
Yes. Which the daughter said earlier, oh, it's a bunch of nickels. And
yeah,
he's
it's like
no, there's a quarter in there too.
Yeah, you could get like a whole candy bar with this.
I'm sure it's not nickels and dimes, but it's close enough.
Yeah, it's similar.
Yeah. But also I like this part too, because the way the protagonist fights against doing it, this is the second most important thing in his life next to his daughter.
And like this entire bucket is maybe $30 worth of change.
Maybe.
And he's gonna fight his grandpa for it.
Yeah, because it's just great how like they're driving off and it looks into the change thing. And
he's like, I just got got.
Yeah. And also the change thing's in a cup noodle, like a big cup noodle thing. It's great. And so, now the search for the sewers begins.
I love the dedication that it starts off with. They all are ready to go find her. She's in the sewers, and it doesn't even take that long for us to cut to them being like, we fucked up.
Yeah. Well, and so, as we mentioned, this was shot on site, but everyone in the cast and crew didn't realize how bad sewers are.
Yeah, there's a reason why nobody goes down there.
Yeah. Yeah, and so actually, part of the reason they shot in sewers over his set was that they had thought about doing actual sets for every sewer shot, but they realized that they are South Korea and don't have the budget of Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean...
So they had to shoot on location, which makes it better because every sewer that they're in is drastically different.
Yes, and I also like it because it validates some of the weird choices that sewers have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they make sense on plan and on paper, and I'm they probably work just fine. I'm not an engineer who does this sort of stuff.
Yeah, grease traps, interceptors, all that shit that I have to coordinate that I don't do anything with.
Exactly. But, like, it's one of those things where you can research that, you can build a set that looks kind of like that, but unless you've had to build a bunch of them that now have to go around this thing over here, it has to match up with this road, so-and-so wants it to go over here, the money is over, like, it has to sit in this exact spot.
Yeah.
It changes it to a point where I don't think a set could have described the sewer in a, like, believable way. Because otherwise you end up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, which, as a child, I thought looked delightful. And now as an adult, I have a lot of questions about the New York sewer system in that show.
I'm going to confess something. The first Ninja Turtles I saw, in its entirety, I'd seen pieces of them, but was a shitty Michael Bay one.
That's the only one you need.
It's a really bad CGI one with Megan Fox.
I'm fully aware.
So bad. But I have reconciled a little bit. I've redeemed myself. I have seen the first movie, and the first original movie is gold.
It really is.
Yeah. I mean, and that was only like in the last year or two, so sorry. But so from this search in the sewers, we get this little bit of a cut. We now begin this interweaving of the homeless kids from the very beginning as they are stealing food and only food.
Yes, they are being good children. Well,
for us Westerners, the older brother does explain it a little bit, and it's a cultural thing that we're not familiar with.
Yeah.
The brother frames the stealing food in terms of a game called Sayori. For explaining to his younger brother why they're not stealing toys.
And money.
Yeah. And it's a practice among children of stealing food for fun that stems from the mid-1900s with when agricultural times were low, kids would steal roosters or chickens and stuff for food on the side.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and now it's turned into like a game that you don't send a kid to jail for. They just get a reprimanding if they get caught.
Yeah, it'd be the equivalent of like a kid stealing a sucker from the gas station around here. Like, you don't do that, but also I'm not going to call the cops.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Well, maybe now they'd call the cops on a kid.
I mean, back when we were children.
Yeah. But while the kids are trying to escape, they get captured by the creature.
Of course they do.
And from this, we cut to the Park family doing the exact same thing of eating a meal together and having a small bonding moment where the spirit or a memory of the daughter appears.
Yeah.
Couple things about this point. There's a creepy ass moment of like the girl's hand just coming over the dad's shoulder, and I'm like, I had to rewind a couple times just to be like, that was creepy. If this was another movie, if this was like The Grudge,
ghost movie?
The Grudge, then this would be a completely different moment. Or like, it reminds me a little, not in the same way, but just like the same motion of like Ghost when Patrick Swayze is reaching around to help mold the clay. Yeah. But I also, it's a brief moment to show how, regardless of how dysfunctional the family is, they came around for the funeral, but that's kind of expected. But in this moment, they're feeding the memory of the daughter and that she was the center of them. And this is probably like how a normal meal actually occurred for them.
Yes, definitely.
And this was just something that just happened with them. And I also like this because after this heartwarming moment, we cut to the daughter for the first time in a long time, dirty in the sewers and surviving off droplets of water.
Yeah, I mean, she's doing her best.
It is a great juxtaposition of what the family wants versus the reality of what's going on.
Definitely.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite cuts in the movie, just because it's so jarring from what we've really seen before.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and in this moment, the creature returns with the homeless kids. The older one did not make it.
Nope, he did.
Yep, but I also like how this shows that the creature is keeping food reserves, and it's somewhat intelligent. It's not ignorant. It's like a squirrel hiding away nuts, but the nuts are living creatures.
Yes.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Because he's keeping the corpses, but he's also keeping the live bodies for later.
Yeah, and, it's one of those things where it's clear that he has the, intelligence to be packing away food, but also you get the very distinct impression that if the meat rotted or these children just died, it would not change the monster's game plan at all.
No.
That might just add flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not here to keep, he's not purposefully, feeding them to, fatten them up. It's it didn't die when it's in there. It'll die eventually.
Yeah, kind of like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, from this moment, we cut into the food shack where the aunt and uncle are being reprimanded for being mean to their brother, who is asleep again.
Yes, he is.
While we are explained to, through exposition, how the protagonist came to be a bit of a dullard.
Yes.
I do like this part, even though it is a little corny.
It is corny.
Because we have a revealing moment for the grandfather, and the way that he sees, like I mentioned earlier, that he and the protagonist are similar.
Yeah.
And that he sees himself and his son as he's desperately trying to struggle to find his daughter in the same way that he couldn't provide for his son.
Yeah.
And that broke his heart, too.
Yeah.
Because we also learned that he was a single father of 3 kids instead of just 1.
Yeah. And he admits that he wasn't there for them like he wanted to be.
Yeah. And so, in his own way, him watching over his son and his granddaughter,
he feels like he's making up a little lost time.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And I also like this moment because there's that little bit of comedy where the siblings have, and he's explaining that they have no frame of reference, but the siblings are being dickheads.
They are being such siblings.
And what should be a serious moment, they're falling asleep.
Yeah, they just full on conk out.
Yeah. Yeah.
The serious talk did not affect them.
Yeah, it's
in fact, they might have heard it already.
It's like when you're being yelled at by your parents, and it's your younger brothers who are or who are the ones who are actually in trouble, but they can't pull you aside and just let them be punished.
Yep, so you just all get to stand there and take it.
That happened a lot because I was a sneaky kid. And my mom's learning about a lot of that now. I was the quiet one.
That's the way to do it.
Yes. And his speech is interrupted because our protagonist has spotted the creature outside. And honestly, kind of a creepy moment, too, because he's just kind of silently watching. He's there.
Yeah, we're being watched.
Yeah. Which, okay, so I have a comment on this. I wonder if there's just a little bit of a mistranslation.
Okay.
Because I don't think the creature was there watching them.
I also didn't think it looked like he was watching
I
them.
think it was just out there drinking the water. Drinking some nice fresh water.
Yeah, and I agree. The first time that I went through that scene, I was like, oh, must just be a bad translation. Maybe it's we're watching him, or I can see him, something like that. But then the other thought occurred to me of well, he doesn't really know that the creature's standing there drinking.
It's out there.
It's out there, and its eyeball is facing him. So maybe it's like a bird, and it has to look out the one side.
Yeah, possibly, but I'm
not saying that he's necessarily right. It's sitting there watching him. He just might not know it's not watching him. Yeah,
it's just a weird moment that didn't hit right with me.
Yeah, the translation wasn't my favorite.
Yeah, or we could,
the word choice wasn't.
Or we could be completely wrong, and it is actually watching them. And
maybe it just sits around with its mouth open.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
But I do also like in this moment. There's this nice transitional shot from the outside from the inside of the stall to the from the outside to the inside, where they pull their gun out and it goes down the line.
Yeah, this is really nice.
Yeah, really nice. But because they fire on the creature, it attacks. And there's a slight change in the dynamics where the creature is now the one on the run, the one being hunted.
Yeah, which I appreciate that this isn't an impervious monster like a lot of the really old school monsters were. It doesn't like being shot at, and it will run away. Yeah,
and we already know it bleeds because he slammed a concrete sign holder on its tail earlier.
Yeah. Very, very nicely.
Yeah. And so, there's a couple things. So, the creature swinging kind of reminds me of a little bit of Men in Black.
Yeah,
Where,
I can totally see that.
We're getting like this weird creature that we thought we were familiar with it, but now it's still kind of like different. Because yeah, it swings on the. We know it hangs to the bridge because it ambushes the two hazmat people.
Yeah, it uses its prehensile tail a lot more like a rainforest monkey would than like the aquatic animal that I was expecting. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It doesn't bother me too much because we don't spend a ton of time with it swinging through the trees. Yeah. So, like, fine.
Yeah, but I also like it because this creature, in its mutation, has adapted to live under the bridge, and that was one of the big design choices in that it should be able to swing freely from the bridge, and that's why it's able to avoid us easily, is because it's hiding in unconventional ways.
Yes, and I do like the narrowing down of a habitat for a monster, where like you said, it has evolved for the bridge, not the river, just the bridge. Yep. So yeah, I mean it works.
Bridge and sewers. Yeah, but also in this moment, because grandfather dies.
Yeah.
There's this nice little kind of like passing of the torch moment where he's telling them to go on. And, like, there's a little bit of slow motion. And slow motion that I don't hate for once.
Yes, because it's not too, like, burningly slow.
It's just, you can tell it's slightly slowed down because they look at each other in the grasses. And there's kind of, like, that understanding of, like, hey, you're going to move on. This is my last stand kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's also saddening too because the moment you hear the click and it cuts to our protagonist like counting, the protagonist was sitting there and thinking about it too. Yeah. Like he's not such a dullard. He keeps track of the actual important things, not the little itsy bitsy moments.
Yeah, and I also like this because he did hand the grandfather his gun saying, I have one more left. One more. And it kind of hammers home that it's not because we see this a lot, especially in like the dramas or other like TV style like movies where it's like, oh, this is our dumb protagonist. He's not really dumb though. He just doesn't understand the importance of paying attention. And I like that there's this level of like, no, he was trying to, and he legitimately miscounted for whatever reason you want to insert because this movie doesn't give you one. And so, like, no, this is how his brain
he
thought.
got caught up in the panic of the moment.
Exactly. And, like, a reasonable thing to happen, but I also appreciate that it doesn't end with him crying in tears and running away to avenge his grandfather, because, again, we've established that he's relying on his grandfather, and also not the brightest. Yeah. So he stays.
Well, and also this is really, because the creature causes carnage initially, but this is the first, I would say, act of cruelty we actually see the creature in, because instead of like taking the grandfather away for a food source, it doesn't take a chance with him because the grandfather is the one who pulls the gun, the one who shoots him earlier.
Yeah, he's just going to kill the grandfather and run away.
Yeah, it's not going to take a chance of playing possum with it. And it's a hard moment.
It is.
Yeah. It's a heartfelt moment because also at the same time, like, our protagonist is captured. And
yes. And honestly, like, it's a good, like, horror gruesome death. It's not so over the top that you're like, oh, now he's all bloody. Yeah. It when his head hits that concrete, you're like, meh? No, he dead.
Yeah, it's
a good solid thwack.
Yes.
But it's not dramatic, it's not over the top, it's very realistic. Yeah, very much so.
And I also like this moment because our protagonist staying behind and being captured is important because, well, he knows his daughter's alive. As far as we know, his father, the grandfather, was the only one who was truly nice to him.
Yeah, like,
and now he's lost all of that.
Yeah,
and
like,
he's
everything's gone.
He's still going to potentially lose his daughter, and so then what will he have left?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it
all works.
Yeah, it works very well together.
Yes.
And in this, we get a news flash that the U.S. soldier is dead.
Oh, no.
And that America is rolling out Agent Yellow to deal with the virus.
Yes.
Bong Joon-ho did mention that it is a comparison to Agent Orange.
Yes.
Which he knew might not be apparent to his South American or South Korean viewers. But he knew it'd be recognizable to us Americans.
Yes.
And for those unfamiliar, because I actually really didn't know about this for a long time, Agent Orange isn't just a punk band.
Nope.
It was a herbicide and defoliant chemical that was used by the military between 1961 and 1971 during Operation Ranch Hand in the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
It has led to a number of health issues for those who have lived and served in Vietnam. And that is a whole other rabbit hole.
I would say that it truly is like not just a rabbit hole. It is a very long and deep and wide rabbit hole.
Yes.
It is a chasm hole. It is very interesting. I do recommend looking it up because it does add a layer to this movie, but it is not required to enjoy this movie.
Yes, but it's important to know that it is a reference, and it's another part of the layering of kind of the satire and poking fun at America at the same time.
I also think
being critical.
Yes, and I also think it adds a layer of like realism to this film, which is something that a lot of monster films have trouble with because maybe your government has a protocol for giant monsters, but I bet you they don't. But this movie takes precedent from the real world and the terrible things that have actually happened and went, they're just going to do that again. Yep.
And so from this point, the movie kind of deviates into three smaller side arches.
Yes.
But they all kind of have like their own little like genre feel to them.
Yeah.
And Bong did bring this up in some of it. Or like for one part of it that made me go down like this kind of thought of like, well, what are these other portions? Because the first part is the brother who is more revealed to have been a student activist. And his arc is very much a crime noir feel.
Yeah.
This is also Bong's nod to student activism during the 1980s.
One we are familiar with both in Korea and in America.
Yes. And with this, the brother's trying to get data from the cell towers.
Yes. He's trying to, like, triangulize where that cell phone came from. Which, good on him for, like, going a different way instead of just keep going through the sewers.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, is it's all them breaking up and trying to tackle the issues in their own ways.
Yeah.
I do have a couple things about his portion. One, I like that his friend is acting fishy and he catches on.
Yes.
And he kind of MacGyvers his way out of it.
He does, but in a very realistic way.
Yes.
Because, don't get me wrong, I love MacGyver. Watched almost all of it.
Yeah.
But MacGyver does manage to escape most of his problems in, like, a very Boy Scout, because that was the point. He was meant to be, like, the good old American boy. But this escape feels very much like a third grade level, like, understanding, but he's quick. He thinks quickly. Yeah,
because even, like, the friend being fishy has, like, he kind of warns the officials that, hey, just a heads up, this guy's good. There's a reason he's not on your records.
Yeah, there's a reason why he was part of all of our group and he doesn't work for this company.
Yeah, and also kind of like, it's also a nice revealing moment of how he's a loser in his own right, or the brother's a loser in his own right.
Yeah.
Because he's surprised that his friend actually has a well-to-do job.
Yeah.
And he is, as far as we know, an unemployed ex-college student.
Yeah, but it's really nicely balanced because it's not even like, it's literally back and forth between like, well, you have a real job. And he's like, yeah, but I spend all my money paying off my debt.
Yeah.
Oh, but you have this. And he goes, no, I don't.
Yeah, he's like, I've got a bunch of credit card bill. And because like he also says, how were you so active in college, but now, and you still graduated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, it's got nice little nods to like the things that are going on societal wise and comments on.
Well, and I think this is a good like part for this character to like start having a different impression of themselves.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of implied, not too heavily, because again, we know a lot about these characters, but we don't get too in deep.
Yeah.
We know just enough backstory.
Yeah, and it's giving them, it's progressing their story while also showing that they're all actively working towards that common goal of the daughter.
Yeah, and so we get the thought that maybe this is the beginning of him realizing that he's not the loser he thought he was.
Yeah.
He just hasn't, like, reapplied himself to the thing he liked.
Yeah.
Or was good at.
Kind of being a
activism.
terrorist a little bit.
Yeah, escaping from offices.
Yeah. One question. How the hell do those doors work?
Okay, so the only reason I kind of know at all is because I'm fairly certain these are security doors.
Yeah.
And so, like, password in, password out sort of door.
Oh.
And so because he blew the circuit inside, I'm assuming someone, like, didn't there's not a safety mechanism for those doors.
But how
to be
did he
pulled
get
apart.
out?
He was already out. Right?
No, because he blows it and then they converge on him and that's how he gets out.
Then that is the one magic trick that I don't know.
Yeah, because we don't ever see him, like, maybe the first door he gets out and jams it, because they don't see him until, like, he's kind of trying to crawl away. And then they go to the other door, and the other door won't open.
I don't know, is it ACT ceiling up there? Did he flip the ceiling?
I don't know.
I don't know.
It's the one, it's the one no reason moment that I can bitch about in this movie, really.
I agree, but also it happens so quick that you don't notice. Like, I totally missed that he was through a blocked door.
Yeah.
Unless he locked it.
But the power's gone. Well, no, those types of doors normally would have, like, some type of reserve power source. So
because you're supposed to be able to open them regardless.
Yeah, because that's right. They go to the guy to get them into the door.
Yeah.
Okay. Somewhat explainable.
A bit. It's
Stupid
just,
moment, but yeah.
You gotta work to get there, but you can do it.
Yeah, because I do like how, like, as he's running, he, like, looks at the guy, like, and you're kind of expecting the guy to be like, how the fuck did you get out?
But instead he's like, run!
Go! Power to the people!
Oh, these doors are so broken!
Maybe he's the one behind it.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, that actually would make sense.
And he's just back there being like, no guys, I'm trying! Click, click, click.
That's why he went to the office. That's why he went to the office.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go with that one.
Yeah. And so, from his moment and his escape, we do get this cut to the sisters arc. It's very short.
Yeah.
And it's also action-based, which is a good reason it's short. She's been hunting and hiding out in the bridges for maybe a day or two. We don't know how long.
Yeah.
We can assume it's a pretty short time. What I like about hers is, yes, it's short. She's still doing the old tried and true method.
Yeah, she knows what she's good at. She's gonna keep doing it.
One, she runs like your character in Death Stranding. Very upright and... Very,
stiff.
Yes. But I like in her moment, because she does find the sewer, she gets the call out to the brother, or to the brothers, and it also ties back into the very beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because her folly in the tournament is what prevents her in the sewers and from her getting further in her arc rather than being knocked into the side drain.
Exactly.
And becoming a victim of the creature.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because she finds the creature. She finds the sewer the creature's in.
Yes.
But she can't let the arrow go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's still holding on.
Yes. And like I said, it's quick, short, and simple.
Yeah.
Whereas the main character's arc is definitely the most horror-based of all of them.
Oh, man. Ugh, if you're not into the medical stuff... Ooh, it's gonna be rough.
Yeah, he's in the only vibrant colored set.
He is bright.
Yes, and he is, as Bong put it, it's very much, he has become kind of the monster for the military.
Yeah, they found a scapegoat, and it's this guy.
Yeah, it's like the diverging, and it ties in later on about the diversion of, like, they're trying to keep the focus off of them pouring formaldehyde down the drains.
Exactly. They found the source of this mysterious virus. Don't worry.
And he's being poked and prodded like the monster should be. But for some reason, because he's always sleepy, he's resistant to the anesthesia, which is...
I'm not enough medical person to know what that's about, but you know what? I appreciate that it wasn't like a magic superpower that he like suddenly had. He just always had it.
And I have connections to the medical field, and I should have asked this instead of the one thing that I overlooked instead of focusing on the door and the door lock.
That's okay. We gotta focus somewhere.
Yeah. And I like this scene because it is kind of comedic, because even though he's being a little poked and prodded, his cries and screams are very childish.
Oh, they're very like, I am uncomfortable, but I'm gonna throw a full tantrum.
Yeah. And I also like in this moment because the Americans are so portrayed so scummy because in the event of the McFarlane incident, they kind of were.
Oh, they very were.
Yeah, the bit of reading I did into it, they're just like...
Yeah, it was royally fucked up.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, we did it, but we'll take care of it on our side.
It was very like, oh no, don't look at the terrible mistake we made.
Yeah.
No.
Another side note, some will recognize the American scientist as the insect specialist from The Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah. Man, he's got a good creepy face.
Yeah, and his one, like, slanty eye.
The one slanty eye gets me, because I don't know where to look.
Yeah, because in this moment, the reason he's scummy is it's revealed that there's no virus, and that...
It's all a lie.
Because the anesthesia has not worked, they are going to do brain surgery on the protagonist to try and keep him quiet, kind of,
lobotomize him.
It also this shot also kind of makes me think of like A Clockwork Orange, where he's got his eyes open and they're forcing him into it.
Yeah, at this point we've gone full medical horror. He is strapped in. It's explained that he's gonna lie and say the virus is in his brain, and we gotta drill it out. Yeah,
it's the only source for the location.
And darn, this anesthesia doesn't work, so you guess you gotta be awake.
Well, and it's also them trying to find... They know that there's no virus, apparently.
Yeah.
But the only other person that they know 100% alive and came in contact with, the only person who could potentially prove their story true, is this man.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, from this, we cut to the sewer where the daughter and the surviving homeless child are trying to escape as she's very much taking a parental role.
Yep. She's finally having more personality than just, like, the grandkid.
Yeah.
Which... I appreciate that they went ahead and gave her kind of a realistic, like, personality. Like, she's supposed to be on the verge of being a teenager, / maybe, like, the very first years of that. So she's got enough head on her to be able to think, like, problem solving.
Yeah.
Not great problem solving, because she doesn't problem solve the entire problem.
Nope.
But enough to get her started, and she's not, waiting for someone to come get her.
Yeah, because her escape attempt is to get a baton, tie the clothes together, and
put it up there, but
climb her way out.
Yeah, but she miscalculated and can't reach the end of the rope.
Nope, but she's going to try her best to get the kid out. She's going to lift the kid up, and the kid's going to climb, but the creature comes.
Ah, dang it.
And one thing, I do like how progressively the kids in this movie are getting dirtier and dirtier the longer they're in there.
They definitely feel realistically stuck.
And it also shows time's elapsed, because we know they're able to get some type of water. It's not good water, but it's water.
Yeah, they're not going to, like, immediately die.
But the youngest kid is thinking about food.
A lot.
Yeah.
And we also know that he probably was hungry going into this situation. I mean, they were just trying to rob a place for food. And it sounds like the brother would have waited until all possible options were done.
Yeah. And we're also seeing that... like you said, they were actually giving the daughter, some actual, like, depth, because when the homeless kid asks her, well, what do you want when you get back? And she says a beer.
Yeah.
Even though she doesn't, and he's like, well, what's it taste like? And it's bitter, it's gross. But it's a connection. It's the connection, and it's one of the best parts in the movie of showing, not telling.
Exactly.
Kind of like, it's letting you make the connections instead of saying, oh, I miss my father. It's no, she misses the beer that her father drank because it's something they shared together and it's their connection.
Yeah, and she misses the beer that her granddad would give her, even though he should know damn well that children don't drink.
Yes. And in this moment, we have a reminder of the grim reality, because the creature returns, and we see where they're hiding in, like, a little storm drain.
Yep, off the side.
And we get a bone cascade as the creature proceeds to...
projectile vomit.
Bones.
So many bones.
And the beer can.
Yeah.
From the beginning. I like this moment because we have little bits of sympathy for the creature here and there, because we know it's just trying to survive.
Yeah.
But we're also now realizing, like, how much carnage it is actually causing.
Yeah, because these aren't just, like, people that it's now pulled back. These are, like, they are skeletons. There's nothing left. No identifying factors. Just bones. Just a lot of bones.
And Bong referred to the vomiting as the reverse history of digestion.
Well, it works because we know that this thing isn't meant to be alive. And it kind of feels like a not fully formed owl, where, like, instead of throwing up a nice little pellet with all the bones in it, its body's, like, not prepared to like, deal with bones, but it eats things whole, so it just pukes them up.
It's anti-birthing them.
Sure.
Very phallic. Or not phallic. I need to
Opposite
of phallic.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but also, like, the amount of, like, just dry heaving that this poor creature does, like, it's not there's no question in your head that, like, oh, maybe it's a very drunk 2 a.m. I've had too much to drink and not enough food heaving. I ate 200 people in a beer can and now I feel bad.
My birthday with pizza rolls that one time.
There was a lot of pizza rolls.
And Death Stranding.
Yes.
And so the creature has returned and we're really shown how dire it is for them. Yep. And we get the only jump scare of the movie. And it's not even like...
It's not a, like, strong jump scare.
No. But Bong also mentioned the reason he put it in there is because it's the one convention he's able to use because he's broken all the rules up until then. Oh,
for sure.
And it fits.
Oh, it works.
It fits because we know that the creature is very much well aware that they're alive. Yeah. So you know it's been sitting there counting the bodies because the last time it dropped anyone into the sewer and the daughter was there, she played dead. Mm-hmm. So it's calculating that, okay, that body's not there anymore.
Yes, so it's at least clever enough to recognize that.
Yes. And so we cut back to our protagonist who, after his procedure, like Homer Simpson having the crayon removed from his brain, which is like the only Simpsons episode I remember, is a changed man. Yeah. And proceeds to escape because here's what's great about how he's changed too, is he's using his own blood as a weapon. He's realized, hey, there's no virus.
There's no virus.
But I'm the only one who really knows this.
Yeah, because this dumb doctor didn't tell anybody. Mm-hmm. Didn't want to save his own skin.
Yeah, but I also like because he comes out and it makes me think of a little bit of Nash. Or not Nash, MASH, when he comes out. And there's just people barbecuing outside, just like...
And he's, like, furious because he's like, I thought this was a trained medical facility and you're telling me it's a box on the beach?
Yeah, just some random Connex.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a great moment. Just it is showing quickly how he has changed because they fiddled with his brain in a way that he's not the dullard he was anymore. Yeah. They fixed his lack of protein through brain surgery.
Yeah, maybe he won't be tired anymore.
Who knows? Well, actually,
I think we do know.
Yeah, we do know. Because after he escapes, the brother wakes up after being saved by some random chill homeless dude.
Yeah, this dude's dope.
I love this guy because he is the epitome of just like zero fucks given.
Absolutely no fucks.
Because the brother's trying to like, hey, oh, this is a nice bag. Oh, I need these bottles. And they're shoju bottles. I need these bottles. Oh, this is a nice bag. I'll pay you for it. The dude clocks him with the
bottle and is like, I get paid in soju and that's it.
Yeah, and he's like, you know what? I don't have anything better to do. Why not?
Like, come on, let's go. Let's go hunt down a monster.
Which, I like it too because the brother, or no, he doesn't even explain anything to it. The homeless guy's just like, well, it seems like you got something better to do than just me sitting around here. Yeah. And it's kind of like they're kindred spirits.
Definitely.
Side note, the homeless dude is portrayed by Joo Moon Yoon. Who has also starred in other of Bong Joon-ho's films, such as Mother and Okja, which Mother is fantastic. Also, he has a small part in our podcast namesake, The Good, the Bad, the Weird.
Very good.
Yeah. I mean, ours has an and in it. But,
yeah, well.
Yeah. But yeah, that surprise, we pulled our name from a South Korean movie.
Who would have thought?
Yeah. So, from this, we cut to protesters who are gathered around as our protagonist reaches the sewers. Mm-hmm. Bong also mentions that the virus was written as like an original fear, but it somehow turned into like it was originally like portrayed for the people in the world as the original fear, but now it's turned into an opportunity for them to use Agent Orange or Agent Yellow. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's again changing the diversions of stuff. Mm-hmm. 'Cause now the daughter has actually taken action as she tries to escape running up the resting creature in a very childish escape attempt, but
yeah, I mean, it was a good thought.
The creature ain't dumb.
No, it's not that dumb.
Nope. And we know shit's about to go down because after that cut, the father shows up at the grate. And it's
Yep.
too late.
It is.
They're
too
all
late.
gone.
Yeah.
And the movie builds real quickly from here.
Yeah. The escalation from here on out. And I mean, we were fast-paced before,
Mhm.
but now things are just going to fly.
Yeah, because the sister has returned, and the creature is back on the hunt.
Yep.
Because she runs into our protagonist in the sewers and not the creature.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's that moment where she thinks the creature's coming still.
Yes.
And I also love this moment because there's a Free Park King Go shirt.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm definitely buying one in the future because it is a very nerdy... Well, I call them nerdy shirts because it's a movie reference that
Yes.
most people won't get.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's cool because it's also like showing their activism and like outside of their family event,
Mhm.
it's also building the world that stuff's been going on. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of become this source of the anti-Agent Yellow
Yeah.
movement because people are waking up that there's not a virus in regards to this. Like,
Yeah, there's definitely a monster and not a virus.
yeah. And he's like, they've only been told that there's two people. As far as we know, the people have been told that it's him and the American guy who have
And the
had
American
the virus.
guy is dead.
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 Hella dead. Which I think he died from the creature eating him or ripping his arm off.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And amidst the chaos, Agent Yellow is released.
Yes. It is.
Well, because the creature returns and starts screwing stuff up.
Yeah, and you know, that's of course when you're going to use your incredibly toxic chemical thing on a crane.
Yeah. So there are a couple things with that. The capsule is supposed to represent the creature from earlier when it was hanging. It was a tie back to it without being like blatantly.
Rough form.
Yeah.
Reminded me of that Pokemon that looks like a cocoon. It's yellow.
A Kakuna?
I don't know. It's yellow and it looks like a cocoon and it doesn't do much.
Kakuna.
Probably.
It's a cocoon.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Not the green one, but the yellow one.
It's Kakuna.
Okay, that one. It looked like that to me.
And so one thing I do want to bring up about Agent Yellow, they actually tried a lot of different things to get this to work.
Okay.
They tried curry powder, but they
Ugh.
realized that would irritate people's lungs.
Yeah, I bet it would.
Instead, they went with red mud dust and edited it in post.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, I thoroughly fooled. Looked good
Yep.
for me. So
Yeah, and it has a great effect on the creature.
yeah, very, very painful. Apparently.
I mean, the creature's existence is pain, so...
Well, and we do know that it's affecting the people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is definitely not just like magic toxic gas that only kills creature.
Yeah.
We can safely assume that since the creature is made out of weird porous,
It's-
frog skin.
Yeah, it's very amphibian.
It is very
Yeah.
amphibian that it is causing it more pain, but it is definitely ruining other people.
Well, a couple things on that. So,
Mm-hmm.
because I'll get into it in a minute because I have some questions.
Mm-hmm.
So after the creature collapses, the daughter and the homeless kid are pulled from the creature's mouth,
Yeah. Real gross.
which is the close-up model I was mentioning earlier.
Very slimy. Very good.
But it is too late.
It is too late.
She did.
She is dead.
And also, the close-up of the creature is the only practical effects portion of the creature itself.
It ties in nicely, and you honestly don't notice.
Yeah, it's a very quick shot, and it's not focused on too heavily, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how Agent Yellow works,
Yeah.
because it's not doing shit to the family or the homeless dude.
Yeah, I did have some questions.
Yeah.
It seems to be, like, some type of irritant, though, because we do get other people who are now got, like, clearly, like, some coughing going on, some, like, agitated lung.
Yeah, but
But
they
maybe-
were also... Well, everyone was running and doing stuff. They were screaming. Who knows?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I'd like to believe that this family is a bunch of chain smokers and this stuff doesn't affect them.
They are immune.
They are immune somehow.
Somehow.
I don't know how.
Because, they're fucking shit up for that creature.
They are going to town.
They are beating the ever-loving hell out of it.
Yes.
And they're all working together. It's their final moment to do everything, because the creature
Yes.
almost seems like it's going to escape at one point.
Yeah, it's getting
and
close to the water.
the homeless man lights it on fire with gasoline.
Go homeless man.
I want to bring this moment up because the guy who was interviewing the director for the commentary referred to the homeless man as kind of like his Deus Ex Machina, and I finally found a good point in our podcast to talk about this plot device.
Yeah.
Because it is a very Deus Ex moment.
Yes, it is.
For those unfamiliar with what the Deus Ex Machina is, it's a plot device that comes from classic Greek theater, where the gods are brought down on the stage through a device, and they're there to solve an irresolvable issue or situation, and is literally machine of the gods.
Yes, yeah.
And the quickest explanation I can do without going too far into it, because there's criticism, this one, it fits.
Yes.
For our weeb listeners, One Punch Man is the epitome of the Deus Ex Machina.
Yes, in a humorous way.
Yes, exactly.
Where clearly the One Punch Man is him, but living in a world where he's not needed. Yeah,
exactly. And one thing I do have to say about this animation, it's the weakest of the entire movie.
It is, but also, like, you don't care too much.
Yeah.
Because, like, you're finally getting the satisfaction of it being dead.
Yeah.
So, like, let it squirm. I'm not super worried that the fire is kind of weirdly sitting on top of it.
Yeah. But it's also a nice moment, too, because the creature, in its last moment of intelligence, decides to try and run for it, as our protagonist takes a broken off steel pipe in a very anime-like shot, which is dope.
Yeah, it was really dope. But also, like, did the brain lobotomy also give him extra, like, kung fu skills? Because he had to have a friend help him pick it up at the beginning of this movie.
It's a broken piece of it.
No, he breaks off the concrete.
Oh, I missed that part.
He picks it up, smashes it on the ground to break off the concrete, smashes the other end to get the sign off, and is now going to use it like a javelin. / spear.
Spear, yeah.
Spear.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it does push him back a little bit, because remember, the creature's desperate, but it's definitely in a weakened state.
And it's definitely, like, bigger than him, but he also, like, kung fu style, like, stops it with himself sliding backwards, and then it's, like, has just an indent on his hand.
Yep.
Where, not gonna lie, was fully expecting the first time I watched this for it to have also stabbed him.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of where I thought we were going.
Well, because it does leave, like, a little indent on his hand.
Again, Kung Fu Master suddenly.
Yeah, because in this moment, too, he's come to terms with the fact that his daughter is dead.
Yep. Gotta put that energy somewhere.
And the aunt and the uncle are mourning now, or, like, coming to terms with it after the actions died down.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also, because it definitely has messed with his mind that he understands he can't do what he's done. In a way, he's kind of already grieved for a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's realized that there was someone else there, so maybe there's the possibility that, like his father trying to redeem himself, not being able to take care of him as a kid, maybe there's a chance that he can do it himself.
A good tie back.
Yeah. And from that, the kid is alive, and we cut to the food stand as the protagonist, now looking not dumb and dyed hair, looking normal.
He looks all cleaned up.
He is watching over the river.
Yes.
Because there's little bits of movement, and he gets his gun ready.
Gun? No?
This is why I said it shows his change. He's not sleepy anymore.
Nope, he's fully vigilant.
He is the lone defender, because we see him taking care of the previously orphaned kid, who proceeds to shut off the news in the outside world because it's a bunch of confusion.
That was adorable, Charlie. You're so cute.
Sorry, in the kind of the climax and conclusion of our movie, Charlie made a weird little.
He's tired. He had a yawn.
Yeah, anyways. Charlie is the exact opposite of the protagonist now.
He is. Also, did you catch that the protagonist? Yeah, dinner. The protagonist doesn't just, like, make ramen like they had been for his daughter, and presumably for him. They all kind of looked like they lived off of the junk food the store sold.
Yeah.
He made a full dinner.
Yeah.
All the side dishes, big thing of rice. Like, he cooked for this kid.
His life is kind of changing around a little bit. Instead of surviving off the cheap dollar food, they're actually eating properly.
Yeah.
But it's also nice because, like, the little bit of news we see is, like, them complaining about America and did we actually use what was Agent Yellow necessary? And finding out, well, you guys kind of created this monster to begin with.
Yeah.
It's very much a tie back to like, just, you know what, shut off the world. Let's focus on what's important to us immediately.
Yeah.
And we get a nice closing shot of the lone shack on the bank in winter.
And honestly, this last little scene has the delightful, like, creepy nostalgia vibes that I live for. Like, the idea of the one lone neon sign glowing in the distance sort of vibe.
Was this the only creature?
Probably not. And we kind of get a tiny hint of that from the very beginning. Because we see our one drop into the river, they feed it beer, it swims away, and a different one attacks people.
Actually, that's a good point.
And we know there's a little one running around the river, too.
Maybe. They don't actually give, like, a time frame between, like, all these events, which I want...
It is a possibility that there is just the one. But we don't know.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so that's how The Host ends.
It is a good movie.
It is fantastic. And I want to go into, as normal, the legacy of The Host, because it's had a bit more of a large impact than I thought. Because upon its release, Host was the most well-received Korean film at the time. It outbeat, I think it was Typhoon.
I think.
But it had a limited release in the States.
Very limited release here.
And a more widely distributed release in Europe.
And I think it even made it to Australia.
Yeah, probably. I didn't even look at that. I think so. I think it did make Australia.
I think it did.
But it was even praised in North Korea.
Yeah, partially because it does have a heavy hand against America, and they love that. As
well as a equally bumbling portrayal of the South Korean government, which...
I mean, it does all align with what they are all about, but I would say that just because South Korea likes it doesn't mean that it is a South Korean flick. I think it just happens to have some things that they said, yeah, this can show up.
North Korean.
That's what I meant. Yeah. Sorry.
It's all good. But it also kind of... Because, I mean, at the time, it just makes me think of, like, all the creature features we were getting were just kind of the generic ones.
Very.
And this one stays kind of true to, like, the original vibe of the original Godzilla movies. Because, like, they were very...
people-based.
Environmental-based and very... Like, yeah, it was about the human story. But it's also just... It's also commentary about society, kind of like what we would see a few years later with Shin Godzilla.
Exactly.
Very similar portrayal of the Japanese government, but more focused on the government than the people story.
Yeah, definitely.
And on top of that, The Host won from what I'm aware, most of the awards for South Korea's Blue Dragon Awards. And Quentin Tarantino included it in his top 20 films since 1992 and 2009.
Nice.
1992 is important because that was the year of Tarantino's debut.
I mean, they have to tie it back to him somehow.
Yes, or he has to tie it back to him somehow.
There we go.
As well, it still has many positive ratings today.
Oh, yeah.
And then on top of that, it was so successful, there was supposed to be a video game based off it, a sequel was planned, as well as Universal was going to do a remake.
Yeah.
But all of those have been hush-hush since... I think the last one on any word on any of them has been 2011.
Yeah, which, I mean, isn't necessarily like it's dead. It just means that we probably won't hear about it for a while. Yeah.
And not only was the movie successful in Korea, but it was the first movie to bring Bong Joon-ho to the international success outside of Korea.
Yeah, and now a lot of people know who he is.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had this, and also part of the reason I wanted to do The Host is because, over a lot of Bong's other films, is I've had this discussion with many people before, that the rise of Korean media in America is a relatively recent phenomenon.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And and I'm sure, because most of the people I've talked to are a bit younger than me about this.
Sure.
So, like, they're into K-pop and stuff, and they're like, oh, yeah, it's been around a while. But it really
hasn't, though.
Yeah, because most of the stuff prior to the mid to late 2000s were hard to get a hold of, and some of them still are. And The Host was really like that change. And, I mean, and that's what's brought other of Bong Joon-ho's films to our premise. Like,
oh, sure. And honestly, not just his works, but a lot of Korean works.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen an influx in Korean actors,
Yeah.
in music and songs that aren't just K-pop. We've seen a ton of increase from literature and animation from Korea recently, too.
Yeah. I would say probably the biggest two that contributed to it was, first off, The Host, and then Old Boy.
Yeah, definitely.
Because those were some of the first Korean films I saw, and those were some of the first ones that were available to us.
Mm-hmm.
And some stuff has become available online, but it's cool to see like just how quickly this changes. Because we went from not really having anything to it being easier to find. It's still not easy in some regards, but
it's definitely becoming a lot easier, though.
Yeah, and Bong Joon-ho went to direct Parasite, which swept the Oscars.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, I mean, it's and I see Host as like really the lead up to us having that, because after that we had Mother Okja, which I have thoughts on Okja, but I'll save that if we ever get to it.
Sure.
And Parasite.
Yeah.
So like Snowpiercer. Yeah, Snowpiercer. Yeah, because Snowpiercer was his first like mainly American movie.
Yeah, and I remember when you watched it, you wouldn't shut up about it.
Yes. For
like a year.
I still love Snowpiercer. Like,
I know, at least once a year you remind us all we need to watch it.
Yes. And actually Philip brings it up, because Philip and I have very similar tastes in dystopic movies.
And honestly, like, especially his films in general, but I think The Host and Snowpiercer are two really good examples of his works. And he's a director who's got a talent for getting films stuck in people's heads. Yeah. Like, you'll watch it, you'll be like, wow, that was great. And then, yeah, you will spend the rest of your afternoon telling everyone who will listen about it. Yeah, like, I watched Okja for the first time. I finished it yesterday. Mm-hmm. I will admit, it's not a movie for me. Yeah. It's the weakest of his works, but it still has every single element of the movies I like of his. Yeah. In it. I mean, and it just shows the talent of like what he works with writing and how he executes a film. Definitely. And The Host is definitely in there with that. Oh yeah, definitely. And like, yeah, there's parts of it that the CGI doesn't necessarily age super great. It's not a super scary horror film if that's what you were looking for, but it is really good. Oh yeah. And honestly, because it's not a super scary horror film, it's not super bloody, it makes it so much easier for like you to say, hey, oh, you haven't seen it, we're gonna throw it on. Yes. And I do apologize, listeners. That is my neighbor and their dog upstairs. They are obnoxious. But he's having so much fun. So if you can hear that, I'm sorry. I didn't want to derail the discussion we were having. It was just there. But one thing I do kind of want to bring up at the end. Do you think that Bong Joon-ho's portrayal of the creature portraying something missing worked? Yes and no. Mm-hmm. I think once you know that was his thought and process behind the monster, I think you can see it and you can make those connections. Mm-hmm. However, if you go into this movie without any background knowledge, which I think is how most people are going to watch this, which is completely fair, I don't necessarily think that is the leap that people are going to go with. No. I think a lot of people are going to see it, they're going to see the mutation that was given as the reason, and the focus is so much more heavy-handed with the government problems, with the foreign relation problems, with the people's distrust problems. That's the stuff that I think people are going to relate to more. Yeah. And honestly, I think that works better. That's what we are still currently dealing with, and most people are going to have stronger feelings for that. Yeah. Well, so for me, when I first saw A Host, I didn't like it. I mean, I saw it back, it had to have just come to DVD, because like I watched it in Italy with my family, and I remember us all watching it, and I think we watched it dub, and we were just like, okay, that was odd, and like none of us really liked it, but like I went back and rewatched it after not seeing it for a long time, and I think in some ways he did succeed in that. First off, I do think it is a great film. Mm-hmm.
not looking at it from just being a monster movie.
Oh, sure.
And understanding how older monster movies worked. But I do think that he portrayed something missing in an interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
Where the creature was not necessarily the thing that was missing, but it was the agent of something missing.
Okay.
That it's the thing that brought the void.
Yeah.
Because for that little bit, we think the daughter's dead. Or it's led on that the daughter's dead.
Yes, yes.
But also in the way that it takes the father.
Yeah, that definitely is a good impactful
It's
moment.
creating the void, and also it's also exemplified in the daughter showing up at dinner.
Mm-hmm.
It's obvious that something's missing there.
Yeah.
And then the cut back to, like, she's the missing piece.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then also the carnage it projects with the vomiting of the bones.
Okay.
Those are lives that are gone. So, like, for the people outside of our main cast, that's furthering the void.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also, it also serves as and by extension our protagonist, because he came in contact with this void creature,
Mm-hmm.
that it's the U.S. government trying to find that missing item
Mm-hmm.
to explain away why they're going to use this chemical weapon.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a multifold question, and I think that's the best thing about The Host, is that it layers all this stuff on top of it so well and
Definitely.
so intricately that I don't think you could take away any moments from this movie and have you be missing something in it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
maybe the only one I can maybe think of is the HVAC guys getting ambushed.
Yeah, that's kind of just okay. But like at the same time, like it does add a reason behind.
Yeah, it
items.
shows the creature. It shows how the creature's been moving around, how it's been getting away from stuff. It's explaining stuff, but it's
useful explanation.
Yeah.
It's not overly done. It's enough for you to have a grounded reality, and it eliminates a lot of questions that most, not just monster films, but horror films in general have always struggled with. Is how do you create an impossible supernatural experience and make it believable and not with a blaring loophole that the audience is stuck dealing with.
Yeah. No, I mean I completely understand why it's done so well, and like,
oh, for sure.
I understand why I didn't like it to begin with. So
I do too, and I also think while it definitely did have a hand in adding to the US's like incorporation of Korean media and actors and literature, I do think that because it was one of the firsts, and one of the first that a lot of people were actually like able to get and watch, I think there was a lot of like a generic audience who, because of a few nuances here or there, or a few storytelling choices, which now that people are more familiar with not just Korean flicks, but also just foreign horror in general, I think a lot of people would like The Host more than when it first made it to America. Yeah,
kind of how like we've seen this rise in multiculturalism in our country.
Exactly.
Where like we've seen it specifically on our side in the anime world, where you get made fun of if you were the anime kid.
Yeah.
And like why one of my brothers is a closet anime nerd still, because he only lets certain people know that he likes that stuff. And he's the one who recommends me shit nowadays because he has more time than I do to watch it.
Yeah, and now Star Wars is an anime.
Yeah.
So like, we've reached a point where as a general collective audience, the few quirks that I think a general audience would have had corpse with originally watching this, like the pacing is not American pacing.
Yeah.
The horror is not your standard American monster horror.
Yeah.
The monster isn't a standard American monster. But I think people have gotten to a point where we've experienced so many variety now that I think a lot of people would be able to go back to this even if they saw it and they didn't like it. I think the tune has changed enough that people who liked it originally but didn't have anyone to tell about, now I think is the time. Yeah, no, and I completely agree with that. I think the movie has aged quite well. It really has.
It's
for how tight the budget was, I'm very impressed.
Oh yeah, I mean, they said, they couldn't do stuff because they're not Hollywood.
Exactly.
And I think because of everything that's happening nowadays, it's going to be one of those movies that's going to tie in to modern sentiments too.
Oh, definitely.
And I think the anti-American portions are well done too, because they're not, I wouldn't consider them anti-American.
No.
They're jabs at us. And I can understand why in 2006 that wouldn't have been...
It wouldn't have been as...
well received.
Well, not even just that, but like, I think it would have put up a defense with a lot of American audiences that, you know, no one wants to be picked on.
Yeah.
And it was a different mindset back then. I do think now a majority of American audience wouldn't even necessarily register this as like anti-American. It would just be like, we fucked up again.
Yeah.
Same old us.
Yeah, again, changes in sentimentalities from being America
to realizing that a lot of news from around the world
doesn't like us.
No, and there's reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. I think that this movie actually has recycled back around so well that it still has a lot of very pertinent topics. Mm-hmm. It might not relate directly to the thing that the director was hoping to. You might not recognize the exact quote. You might not recognize Mr. Orange or any of that sort of stuff. Yeah. Or Agent Orange. But
Mr. Orange is Tarantino.
Yes. But you will recognize the elements. You will recognize the theme. You will recognize that this isn't just pulled from a space flick. This is pulled from a newsreel somewhere. Mm-hmm. Like, those are things that everyone's going to know without having to do any background digging anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those movies that's aged better.
I think so.
Yeah, than when it first came out. Or at least for us.
I agree. To be honest, though, I think the majority of the American audience is going to get this and going to really love, and there's going to be a ton of new watch for the host once Universal finally gets around to the probably what will be like a fake sequel, a spiritual sequel, and people will realize that there was an original one and you should go watch that.
From my understanding, everything's either in development hell or it's vaporware where it's never going to come out. It's just something that was hot at the time. They bought the rights. Yeah. And they're just going to hold on to it until never.
Oh, for sure. But also knowing Universal, I also know that they're not going to sit on a good monster for too long.
No.
It probably won't be the host. It probably won't be tied back to this director. It will definitely probably not have any of these actors. And Universal will claim left and right that it has nothing to do with this movie. But we're all going to know.
Yeah. And I mean, that's another topic of adaptations, because Old Boy sucks dick. The American adaptation is the fucking worst. I despise that movie so much. I love the original, but then we have like something like The Uninvited, which is a remake and adaptation of Tale of Two Sisters, which isn't bad, but it's not as great as the original kind of thing.
Yeah, and those are the sort of things that, for people who really do like this sort of stuff, once that dumb remake comes out, or reinterpretation, as I'm sure they would like it phrased.
Yes.
People who do like this stuff, who somehow missed it the first time around, they're going to find it, and then they're going to be the ones who are going to tell everyone they need to watch it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, and I don't know. I'm excited to have talked about this movie. I mean,
it's a good movie.
At the end of it all, Chris, do you recommend watching The Host? I think it's clear, but...
Definitely. Is it something that I personally am going to work into my every year rotation? No. But if it is on, I'm going to watch it. If you want to rewatch it, I will watch it with you happily.
Yes, I love this movie. I completely understand if monster movies aren't your thing or satirical films aren't, but I do highly recommend watching this just because it is definitely key in kind of where media has been going in the past few years. I mean, we saw the influx of Japanese movies in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but didn't really get them till later on. But like, we're seeing that same thing happening exactly again.
Oh, for sure.
And it's interesting just to take that step back and see earlier works and how they still kind of tie in, because Parasite has a lot of ties to like The Host.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, there's that similarity that's interesting to go back and see.
Yeah, and I think this is a good one where if if you're a hardcore horror fan, but you have a friend who's really not, this is a good middle ground.
Yeah.
This is a good one that you can both agree on.
Yeah, no, actually, that's a good point, especially with us not planning and picking like 3 horror films back to back to back right before spooky season.
Sorry, not sorry.
Not at all. So, but yeah, definitely, if you get a chance, watch The Host. It's fantastic.
And it's honestly getting really easy to get a hold of.
Yes, exactly. The better thing about modern age. So, but anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.